Have you ever opened your freezer and just grabbed a handful of ice cubes without a second thought? It feels so simple, right? Well, picture this. It's the year 1800. There are no freezers, no refrigerators, no electricity. So, how on earth did people get ice for their drinks? You might think it was an impossible luxury, but the story of 19th century ice is one of incredible ingenuity, backbreaking labor, and a business that changed the world. Let's rewind the clock. Before the 1800s, ice was mostly a plaything for the super rich. If you were a king or a wealthy aristocrat, you might have an ice house on your estate. These were deep, insulated pits, often built into the side of a hill, where servants would pack snow and ice from the winter. It was a massive effort, and the ice was precious, used to chill drinks and make exotic frozen desserts for lavish parties. For the average person, a cool drink in summer meant pulling it from a well or a cellar. Ice was something you only heard about in stories. But then one man had a crazy idea. His name was Frederic Tudor, a Bostonian who would later be known as the Ice King. In the early 1800s, Tudor looked at the frozen ponds and lakes of New England and didn't just see a winter landscape. He saw a gold mine. His plan: to harvest this natural ice and ship it to hot climates where people would pay a fortune for it. Everyone thought he was nuts. His first attempt in 1806 was a disaster. He shipped 130 tons of ice from Massachusetts to the Caribbean island of Martinique. The problem was, nobody there knew what to do with it. They'd never seen a solid block of frozen water before. Most of it melted on the docks before he could convince anyone to buy it. He lost a fortune and ended up in debtor's prison. But Tudor was stubborn. He knew that to sell ice, he first had to create a demand for it, so he changed his strategy. He started giving ice away for free to bartenders. He taught them how to make chilled cocktails, like mint juleps. He demonstrated how ice could preserve fresh fruit and dairy. Suddenly, people who had only ever known lukewarm drinks were experiencing the crisp, refreshing shock of an ice-cold beverage. It was a sensation. Word spread, and soon everyone wanted what Tudor was selling. But how did they get the ice from a frozen lake in New England to a glass in New Orleans or even India? This is where the real hard work came in. The ice harvest was a massive seasonal operation. When the ice on a lake or pond was about a foot thick, the work began. First, men and horses would clear the snow off the surface. Then a special horse-drawn plow would score the ice into a perfect grid, like a giant frozen chessboard. After the grid was cut, it was time for the real muscle. Teams of men, armed with long saws and massive iron bars, would break the huge blocks free. These blocks, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, were floated down channels of open water toward a conveyor belt. This conveyor, often powered by horses or steam engines, would haul the blocks up into massive, insulated storehouses. These ice houses were architectural marvels. They had double walls packed with sawdust, wood shavings, or hay for insulation. Inside, the ice blocks were stacked with layers of sawdust between them to prevent them from fusing together. A well-packed ice house could keep ice frozen for years, even through the hottest summers. It was a race against time, with crews working around the clock in brutally cold conditions to harvest as much ice as possible before the spring thaw. Once stored, the ice was ready for its journey. It was loaded onto ships, again packed in sawdust, and sent all over the world. Tudor perfected the shipping process, minimizing melt and making it profitable to send ice as far as Calcutta, India. Imagine, people in tropical climates could suddenly enjoy ice cream and cold drinks, thanks to a frozen pond thousands of miles away. So what did this mean for the average person? In the early days of the ice trade, it was still a luxury. If you lived in a major city like New York or Boston, you might see the Iceman. He would drive a horse-drawn wagon through the streets, and households would put a card in their window, indicating how much ice they needed. The Iceman would chip off a block of the right size with an ice pick, grab it with a big pair of tongs, and carry it into your kitchen. You wouldn't put this ice directly in your drink, though. This was natural ice, harvested from lakes and rivers. It wasn't always the cleanest. It often had bits of leaves, dirt, or even fish frozen inside. So people didn't use it for tumbler ice. Instead, they put it in an icebox. An icebox was basically a wooden cabinet with a tin or zinc lining, insulated with materials like cork or sawdust. The block of ice went into a top compartment, and as the cold air sank, it kept food in the lower compartments from spoiling. For the first time, families could keep milk, butter, and meat fresh for days instead of hours. This completely changed how people ate and shopped. It was a revolution in food safety and convenience. But what about that nice clean ice for your drink? For the wealthy, this became the new status symbol. They still got their ice delivered, but they would use special tools to wash it and then shave or chip it into their glasses. Having clear, clean ice directly in your cocktail was a sign that you could afford to be wasteful with it. The rich hosted ice cream socials and served elaborate drinks chilled to perfection. For the poor, the experience was very different. They couldn't afford a regular ice delivery or a fancy icebox. If they got ice at all, it was often the smaller, cheaper, and dirtier pieces left over at the ice depot. They might buy a small chunk to put in a bucket to keep a bottle of milk cool for a little while. A cold drink was a rare treat, probably bought from a street vendor on a sweltering day, not something you could just have at home. The ice itself was often seen as too precious to just let it melt in a glass. This entire industry, built on frozen water and sawdust, thrived for about a century. But just as technology created the ice trade, new technology would eventually end it. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, mechanical refrigeration and artificial ice-making plants started to appear. These plants could produce clean, uniform ice on demand, right in the middle of a city, without relying on winter. The old way of harvesting ice from lakes couldn't compete. The great ice houses fell into disrepair, and the iceman's wagon was slowly replaced by the electric hum of the modern refrigerator. Frederic Tudor's frozen empire melted away, but not before it completely transformed daily life, public health, and how the entire world eats and drinks. So the next time you hear the clink of ice in your glass, take a moment to appreciate it. That simple cube has a surprisingly long and fascinating history. It represents a journey from a luxury for kings to a modern convenience we all enjoy, all thanks to a stubborn Bostonian and the armies of workers who braved the cold to harvest winter. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as cool as I did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of everyday things. See you next time.